This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English. Episode number 50 something, 58 maybe. Great news, I have a new microphone. Although I don't really know how it works. So there's still maybe some small problems with the quality, but better than last week, so we are moving in the right direction. Anyway, in today's show, I speak to Dan the Man, and we try to find an answer to the question of why do people always say they are busy? Mainly because Dan said that to me about 30 minutes before recording this podcast, and I was a bit pissed off, to be honest. So remember, pissed off means angry. So yeah, I was a bit pissed off. So instead of just arguing with Dan alone, I thought the best thing to do is probably just argue with him on the podcast. So that's basically what we do. The good thing is, I can often spend like 2 hours trying to plan a podcast, but days like today took 5 minutes. And often in these type of shows is when the most rock and roll vocabulary comes out, which is exactly what happens today. There are some seriously sexy idioms, and there are some other ones that I forgot to mention during the show. So if you listen to the end, I will mention them there. So don't worry. So sit back, relax, and happy listening. Dan the Man, how are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, Dan. How does it feel now you are officially 33?
Yeah, same as last week.
Well, I don't know. I feel a little bit different talking to you now. We're a different age because I'm still young. I'm 32. You're 33. Can we still be friends?
Yeah, but you're aging like a pear, though, aren't you? You're getting
a nice expression there. So when someone doesn't age, like get older very well, you say they age like a pear. So if you think I look like a pear, please let me know. Anyway, Dan, how do we start the show?
Are you going to ask me this every week? It's a review.
Routine is important, Dan, okay? But yeah, you answered the question correctly. It is a review. And do you think we have a review?
No.
Correct, we don't. So if any listener wants to, leave us a review, that would be great. It's possible we do have one, but people just haven't sent it to me, so I haven't seen it. So, if you have, please let us know. So today's podcast, Dan, is an interesting topic. Just to give all the rockers and rollers some context to this. So Dan and I were exchanging messages this morning about when to do the podcast.
No, hang on. We weren't deciding when to do the podcast. That had been decided.
Nice past perfect, Dan. That had been decided. An action before another action. Yes, it had been decided, but I went out and got drunk last night, like an English hooligan. So I asked Dan, we're a team, for some help to say, can we change the time? Can we do it a bit later? And I received this message from Dan.
I can't do it later, unfortunately. I can only do it today. This morning I've got so much on. I'm getting French lessons now. So, I'm a busy man.
So there was a bit of rock and roll vocabulary there when you said in the message, I've got a lot on, which means I'm very busy. And we can just understand from the tone of his voice, like, I've got a lot on. I'm doing French lessons.
Listen, it's not important what I am or what I am not doing. As you said 2 minutes ago, routine is important. I have my routine set up for today, and because you welched, I shouldn't have to be punished for that. And you managed to get the podcast together in time anyway, so...
Well, that's only because of my wonderful skill. The word welched you just used, though, Dan. Because I welched. What does that mean?
You don't know what it means.
Well...
You don't, do you?
I'm actually having a bit of difficulty, but generally for the listeners. So tell us all, Dan. Every day is a school day. We're all here to learn.
It's basically when someone doesn't do what they say they are going to do.
Ah, okay. Because I said, let's do the podcast at 10:30. Then I want it to change, so I was welching. Okay.
The penny has dropped.
Go easy with the rock and roll vocabulary, Dan. the penny has dropped is a very nice expression, which means like you have finally understood. Anyway, so let's get back to how busy you are, because regular listeners of the show will know that Dan lives in France and does fuck all. He doesn't work. He just sits around doing I don't know what. No, it's a mystery. It's one of the mysteries of the world. What does Dan the man do every day where he's so busy that he can't do the podcast an hour later?
And I know what you're doing here because you've asked me this several times and I refuse to tell you what I do. So you've put it on the podcast to try and get the information out of me.
Well, visibility is good, Dan, okay? We all want to know. And I'm also coming to see you in a couple of days, and I will look at this daily routine and see how busy you are.
There will be no daily routine when you're here. It'll be a case
Sure.
of showing you the sights and sounds of Toulouse.
Sure. But your problem of saying you're busy, Dan, is actually a quite common thing, because after you said that, I got some inspiration and looked on the internet and found a lot of information, because many people say this, apparently. It's quite a fashionable thing to say, let's say. But apparently it can sabotage your career and relationships, experts say. So, sabotage, what does that mean, Dan?
To destroy.
Exactly. And so you are sabotaging or destroying your relationship with me, for one, I can tell you, with your constant...
Well, that's deliberate.
But I don't know about Mrs. Dan the man. Are you sabotaging your relationship with her with your constant I'm so busy?
No, I think she likes it. She's yeah.
Maybe you just say that so she thinks you're actually doing something. But
in reality, I'm watching TV. Yeah.
Yeah. Another fact here, apparently, is that 1 in 3 workers saying it is becoming more and more difficult to achieve a work-life balance. So many people talk about this balance because obviously you don't want to work too much because you need to live. So how is your work-life balance, Dan?
It's fantastic. Thank you for asking. I actually worked for 12 hours yesterday, though, which is probably more than you did.
Well, I'm still on holiday. I will admit I'm not very busy at the moment, but that is because before I was working 12 hours every day. But you know, it's not a competition, Dan. Even though if it were a competition, I would win.
I'm not sure you would.
Second conditional there. If it were a conditional, I would win. So the reason why people like you like to say they're busy is because apparently it gives the impression that you are valuable. So you say, oh, look, no, I can't. I'm so busy. I've got French lessons. So it makes you try and seem valuable. But
okay, I'm going to give you the truth here. Okay, I do have a lot on today.
Very nice. I have a lot on. We had that one before. I'm very busy. Yeah.
But I probably could have squeezed you in at some point. The reason I said I'm busy is because this is about personal standards. We said we would meet at 10:30, and because you went out and got pissed,
Richie's got drunk.
Yeah, you tried to move the time, and I refused.
But we are a team, Dan. You have moved the time before, so
never for that. Never for that.
But apparently, when you say I'm busy, what you're actually saying is I'm not good at prioritizing my time, and you are not a priority. So that is the message you gave to me, Dan.
No, is it really?
Yes.
I think it's the opposite. I'm good at prioritizing my time, which is why it has to be at 10:30.
Okay, so maybe the first part, but the second part, when basically you're saying to me, I do not consider you a priority, and I've also read into this situation and thought about how it's an insult to the listeners, Dan, because you're saying I don't find them important.
If you had said to me, like you did last week, that your microphone had broken, I would have gone, okay, let's move it.
Sure.
The alcohol addiction that you have is not an excuse.
Sure. But this attitude of being busy apparently depends on the country, because apparently in America it's cool to say, I'm really busy. So maybe you should go and live there, Dan. Can't
get a green card.
It's not easy, is it? It's not
No,
easy.
no.
So yeah, in America it's cool to say, I'm working. But in Italy, apparently, according to the article, I didn't say this. For example, if you work in the summer, you're considered a bit of a loser, really, a bit of an idiot, because, nobody wants to work in the summer.
Is that true?
Giving my personal opinion, yeah, if you say to someone here, no, I'm working all summer, they will probably think, he's a bit of a...
So what happens in the summer then?
People just relax down. We work hard here in Italy, okay? All year. Not like you, who just sits around all year. We work hard every day. And so why not? Let's have a holiday in August. Let's relax.
So everyone goes on holiday?
More or less.
How does the country function?
Well, I am not a politician, Dan, okay? So you probably need to speak to someone else about that.
No, I mean, who's working? There must be people working.
Well, some very few people are working.
The losers.
The losers, exactly. So a loser, just so everybody knows, is someone that is not cool, okay? Probably could describe Dan as a loser, if you want.
Cheers.
You're welcome. So another one here that it says, when people say they are busy, it makes them feel important. But this psychiatrist, something like that, who works at Hong Kong University, her name is J. Christine Kim, said, yeah, it makes them feel important, but what it really is a cry for help. So a cry for help is like when people ask to be helped. So it's a cry for help because they just want to be listened to. So Dan, I am here to listen to you. Okay, I've heard your cry for help. So let's talk.
I bet when you read that.
Oh, that was the best bit. That was when I decided this is definitely what we're going to do for the podcast.
How are you going to help me?
Well, you need to talk to me, Dan. What is the problem? Let's talk about you.
What, right now?
Dan, I'm coming to France at the weekend, okay? We can have a chat. You can tell me about the problems and I will help you, okay?
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, that's it, yeah?
Yeah, that's the end, Dan. All right, well, I'll see you, on Friday anyway, won't I?
Yeah, I may or may not meet you at the airport, so...
I will be fine, Dan. I will be fine. All right?
All right, cool. See you then.
See you later.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Dan the man and me speaking about why people, like Dan, always say they are very busy. One thing, having just listened to the podcast, I noticed there were a lot of P's, like p, 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 which doesn't sound great, so I'll try to resolve that for next time. Anyway, Dan used a nice idiom when he said that I am aging like a pear. So as we said in the show, that's when you get old, but not very well, if that makes sense. For example, the opposite of that is someone like David Beckham, who every year he gets older, he actually gets better looking. It's crazy. I don't know why we use a pear to express this meaning. Do pears not look good when they're older? I haven't really thought about it. Anyway, another term was Dan saying, I've got a lot on. So remember, if you have a lot on, well, it generally actually means you have a lot to do, many things to do, so you are busy, which apparently Dan is because he has French lessons. I will not comment any further on that. I will let you make your own conclusions. And we had the word welched, which I must admit I had never heard of before, but as I have said in previous podcasts, I have the vocabulary of a 5-year-old. Actually, my niece is 5, and probably she knows more words than me. Anyway, welched is when you don't do something that you said you were going to do. In this case, I had said to Dan, let's do the podcast at 10:30. But because I got drunk last night, I didn't want to. I wanted to do it later. So Dan was saying that I welched. When Dan was explaining the word welched to me, and then I understood, he said, oh, the penny has dropped. So a penny is obviously a coin we use for money. This is a very nice expression, so I'm literally going to show you the literal sense. So a penny is spinning like this, and whilst it's spinning, I'm trying to understand, and now it's stopped, and now I fully understand the concept. So this is a nice expression we use when someone doesn't understand and then finally they do. So say, finally, the penny has dropped. We had the word sabotage when I was saying to Dan that he is sabotaging his relationships and career because he keeps saying he's busy, which is destroying. He's certainly destroying his relationship with me. I don't know what we can say about how he is sabotaging his career, because at the moment his career is sitting around doing French lessons. Anyway, we had got pissed, because Dan said, just because you went out and got pissed, which is get drunk. Very English term that. But obviously it was the past, so he said got drunk. Loser, I think most people know that. That's someone that is not cool, like Dan. A cry for help was another one. I probably explained that badly in the show, because a cry for help is normally an action someone does because they don't want to ask you directly for help. Often, it's not the nicest example, but when someone tries to commit suicide, like kill themselves, but they don't really try to do it, they just do it a little bit. Some people say it's a cry for help. They do this so people will notice that they are having problems. I'm very sorry that is a terrible example to use. My brain is not really functioning, so sorry about that. But often people say that. Not me, but other people do. So let's look at the ones I didn't mention in the show. When I was explaining what Dan does, I said this. Regular listeners of the show will know that Dan lives in France and does fuck all. So fuck all is a very nice term, which means nothing. So if you do fuck all, you do nothing. You could say, for example, I know fuck all about art, which is true. I know fuck all about art. Nothing. And Dan also used a nice expression when he was saying that he could have actually done the podcast. He said this.
Okay, I'm going to give you the truth here, okay? I do have a lot on today, but I probably could have squeezed you in at some point.
So I could have squeezed you in. We use this term, squeeze you in, when we are very busy. Maybe we have lots of meetings during the day. Often a doctor, maybe. So you want to have an appointment with the doctor, and if he squeezes you in, that's he finds time for you. But it's difficult, but maybe there's a 10-minute window in which he is free. So he says, okay, come at 5 o'clock and I will squeeze you in. I will find the time. Anyway, that is everything for today. As I mentioned in the show, I'm going to France tomorrow to see Dan the Man. So you probably will see some stupid pictures of us doing stupid stuff. I'm not 100% sure if there'll be a podcast on Monday or Thursday next week. So look at the Facebook page, look at the Instagram page, and I'll probably mention it there. One more thing, we've got to that point again of no reviews, so obviously I need to say to you, please leave us a review. I know you hate me for it, and I hate myself for asking, if I'm being honest, but unfortunately in the podcast world, this is what you need to do. Well, I hear the professionals do it, so I think it's a good idea. I don't really know. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. Have a good weekend, and speak to you sometime next week. In the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.